So now we are ready to create our React component counter. So let's go to the components folder, and within that let us select the redux_examples folder, and I'm going to add a new file called counter.js. Counter.js is going to be a function component and it has to return some JSX. So let's write a return statement here, and let's add an root div, and now we have to add a JSX over here. Let's go to the UI wireframe and look at what we need to add. So we have two buttons over here, and in between those two buttons we should show this number over here. So let's add JSX for that. So on the left we need to have the decrement button. So I'm going to type button and I'm going to type minus over here. I'll add some space after the button like this, and I'm going to specify 0 as the value for now, and let's add space again after the value like this, and let's add one more button for the plus symbol like this. Now this value has to come from the Redux store because we have written a counter reducer for managing that value, and we have seen in Redux DevTools that there is a key value pair with the key counter and the value being an object. So let's use this counter key over here and get hold of this object from the Redux store. And to get hold of part of the state tree within the Redux store, we have to use the useSelector function. So I'm going to type const counter equals useSelector, and to this useSelector function I'm going to pass an arrow function like this, state, and I'm going to type state dot whatever corresponds to the key within the state tree that we want to select. So we want to get hold of this counter reducer here, so we have to use the counter key. So I'm going to select this name here and I'm going to paste it over here. Please observe that VS Code has automatically added the import statement for useSelector from React Redux library. And what we have written here is that within the Redux store, we want to get hold of the subtree with the counter key. That means this part of the state tree. As we write more examples, we'll have more entries over here, and a full-fledged single-page application will have a lot of reducers over here. And so the useSelector hook helps us in selecting the part of the state tree that we want to work with. So at this point, this variable counter over here will have this object assigned to it. So counter will be an object with a key value pair like this. The key's name is value, and the value of this key is a numeric value 0. So to get hold of this numeric value 0, here we have to write counter dot value. Let us export this component and use that within app.js. So I have opened app.js. I'm going to remove this header section over here, and I'm going to type counter over here like this. For some reason, VS Code has not added the import statement for me this time. So I'm going to type import counter, and now it's prompting me. So I'm going to select that. And so we have added the import statement for the counter component. Let's go to the web page and look at the UI. So the display of our counter component is working. We were able to read the value 0 from the Redux store, and we were able to display it over here. We use these two statements to get hold of the current state value, which is 0, which is what is being displayed here. And now we have to add code to make these buttons work, because right now clicking on these buttons does nothing. Clicking on this plus button should increment this value, and clicking on this minus button should decrement this value. So let's add code for that now. So for this minus button, I'm going to type on click equals handle decrement, and for this plus button, I'm going to write on click equals handle increment. And now we have to write code for these event handlers, handle decrement and handle increment. So I'm going to type const handle decrement equals, let's make it an arrow function. And in the function body, what we want to do is we want to send an action to the reducer. And to send an action to the reducer, we have to use the dispatch method. And we can get hold of the dispatch method by using the useDispatch hook that React Redux gives us. So let's type const dispatch equals useDispatch, and we just have to call it like this. UseDispatch is also part of the React Redux library, and VS Code has modified the import statement to include useDispatch over here. And once we have dispatch available to us, we can call dispatch like this. I'm going to type dispatch, and the argument to dispatch will be a Redux action. Like we have been discussing, an action is an object that needs to at least have a key called type. We have listed the possible actions over here, and the action object corresponding to the decrement operation is this type decrement within single quotes. So let's copy this action from here. That means we are copying this object from here, and let's go to the counter component and paste that action, that means that object, as an argument to dispatch method like this. Let's do the same for handle increment as well. So I'm going to type const handle increment equals, let's make it an arrow function as well, and I'm going to call the dispatch method for handle increment also, and as an argument to dispatch method I'm going to go back to the counter reducer, and I'm going to copy this object over here. That means I'm going to copy this action over here with the type increment, and I'm going to go back to the counter component and pass that action, that means that object, to the dispatch method like this. So let's examine what will happen when one of these two buttons are clicked. Let's say the increment button is clicked, then handle increment will get invoked, which is this code over here, and in the function body there is a single statement which is a dispatch statement, and this dispatch statement is sending an action with the type increment. When the dispatch statement is called like this, this object, that means this action over here with the type increment, will reach the counter reducer over here, and this action will be this object that I have highlighted over here. So the action will be an object with the type increment. So this action over here will be an object with the type increment within single quotes. And so when this code executes, the switch statement, when it examines action.type, since action.type is increment, it will match this case over here, and this line of code will get executed, which is a return statement wherein we are incrementing this value by 1, and we are returning that new object as the return value of this function counter reducer. And similarly, when the minus button is clicked, the handle decrement event handler will be invoked, which is this code over here, and its function body also has a dispatch statement which is dispatching an action with the type decrement to the reducer. This action which I have selected over here will reach the counter reducer function, and this action will be this object over here. And when this code executes, the action.type will match this case decrement over here, and so this statement will get executed wherein we are decrementing the state variable by 1. Let us go to the web page and see if the buttons are working now. Let's also select state over here, and let's observe the value of state over here. Also keep an eye on this box over here. This is where the actions will be listed, and this is the state tree. So at any given time we can find out the current value of the state by looking at the state tree over here. So I'm going to click on plus now, and as you can see, the increment action got listed over here, and the numeric value over here has increased to 1, and that is being reflected over here. Let's click the plus button one more time, and as you can see here, a second increment action got listed here, and the numeric value increased to 2, which is what is being shown here. So I'm going to click on this button a few times, and I'm going to click on this minus button also a few times, and you can see that when I clicked on those buttons, these different actions were dispatched, and this numeric value over here kept changing accordingly. We can even take a look at the comparison between the previous state and the current state by clicking on this diff tab over here. As you can see here, this was the previous value and this is the current value. If you keep an eye on these values over here, what I'll do is I'll click on this plus button again, and you can see that the previous value was 1 and the current value is 2, which is being shown here. I'll click on the plus button again, and you can see that the previous value is listed as 2 and the current value is 3, which is being shown here. So we can take a look at the current value of state by clicking on state over here, and we can also take a look at the diff values. That means the difference between the previous state and the current state by clicking on this diff button over here. And this action button over here lists the latest action that happened. So if I click on the minus button now, this will change to decrement. As you can see here, this changed to decrement now, which is what is listed over here as the final action. So the point to remember is that in this function component counter, if you put our state in a Redux store, that means our state is in a global location. That means it's going to be outside our React component, And since that state is outside the React component, we'll have to use the useSelector hook to get hold of the part of the state tree that we want to access. So for reading purposes, we will use the useSelector hook. And if we want to modify state that is in the Redux store, since that state is outside this function component over here, we'll have to call this dispatch method, and we'll have to pass an action as an argument to the dispatch method. And we have to keep in mind that an action is an object which at least has one key called type. And depending on the type of the action, when that action reaches the reducer, the code that we wrote should handle that action and return the new state accordingly. Just in case the action.type does not match the provided case statements, then the current state will be returned. We'll conclude this first example over here. We'll be doing a few more examples to get some more practice so that we get used to the terms reducer, action, etc. And we also get used to the Redux pattern.